Welcome back to another episode of the Feeder series here, guys, and very kind of excited for this one because we have a very special guest joining us today, and that is Ayrton Simmons. So, Ayrton, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's no problem at all, mate. Thank you for kind of taking the time out. I know we were kind of discussing a bit pre-recording this in terms of things to do in this challenging time. You're running out of ideas, I imagine, like most of us.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it hasn't been too bad these last couple of weeks because you sort of get into your daily routine, as boring as it is. But, I mean, yeah, there's not much you can do. I get up and do my daily exercise, and apart from that, it's just I've been watching previous races from the Euro Formula Championship, trying to get a feel for what the racing's like at certain circuits, and that's about it. To be fair, there's not much more I can do really.
Exactly, it's just kind of itching to kind of get back out on that racetrack, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely buzzing. Can't wait.
Right, so what we'll do kind of like with today is kind of try and get people to know you a little bit better and look back at your career. And I think we'll probably have to start off where we most start off with is at the beginning, and we'll look at your karting career. So obviously you started like most people in karting, but it started in Spain. I'm correct in saying, aren't you? You guys were living out in Spain at the time, and your dad would take you to the karting circuit.
Yeah. Started over in Madrid when I was about five years old. But for the first year or so, I was just literally just doing testing. I don't think I was quite at a level to be thrown into a race. But then, Dad sort of saw the progression, saw that I was getting better and better. Every weekend we went out testing. And, we decided to buy our own car, and it started from there, really.
I know you kind of did, Peter Windsor last year kind of did a piece on you, didn't he, for his channel? And I remember you saying in your interview there, you kind of said from the second lap you were kind of hooked on everything. But with karting, what kind of made you obsess about this and go, you know what, I wanna try and do this as a career?
Well, yeah, as you said, and as I've said before in previous interviews, from the second lap, I just fell in love. I loved the speed. I loved just driving, really. To be fair, I actually had an electric car when I was about 6 months old, and I was driving that around the garden. So you could say I started at the age of before 1, but professionally probably when I was 5. But yeah, I mean, I think what inspired me really was watching the races with Dad, the F1 races on the telly, and I sort of wanted to do that at the start, but obviously as a kid you don't understand, you can't just go straight to a Formula One car, you got to start somewhere. So Dad just explained the process, and he said, well, if that's what you want to do, we could have a go at it one day, do just a track day, and see how you feel, and let me know what you want. Obviously Dad being a massive racing fan, he wasn't going to turn down a kid that wants to be a racing driver. And since the second lap I just wanted to go karting again. After the first weekend, I just said, Dad, when can we go again? And it just ended up being our weekend thing, because Dad was still working over here in the UK when I was living out there in Madrid. So I only used to see him weekends. I used to fly every Friday night. And it just started to be our little way of spending time together, really.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a really nice way into it, and I imagine that's probably how a lot of people started. They're like, see something, a family member or anything had something into racing, and then they're like, you know what, this is great fun. I want to do more of this. But when did you kind of have a realization that you were like, obviously everyone probably has a dream at some point, and yours was kind of dreaming, can you climb it? And obviously it's still the dream today, the way you're working through your career. But what made you at a point in karting go, you know what, I'm actually pretty good at this?
It was probably obviously not at the very start, because you got to start somewhere. But I think the first season I did racing, my dad's never put pressure on me, and he said to me that my first race, he said, your goal of this race is not to win the race, not to finish 10th, whatever. He said, finish the race. So I said, okay. So I went out. I got lapped, to be fair, first ever race, but I finished the race and I was happy. I achieved my goal. the next race, Dad said, right, try not to get lapped this time, see what happens. And I didn't get lapped. So then every race, he was like, right, try finish top 15, top 12. It was really progressional. And by the last race, he said to me, if you get a top 6, I'll be so happy, because the progression you've had from being lapped at the first race to finishing in the top 10 in the last one would be massive. And yeah, I finished 6th on my last race of the season, and I was over the moon. And that was sort of my startup year. And then I went on to win my first championship in karting. I won the Madrid Championship in my second year of racing. So from there, really, since I started winning, I was like, this could be, not only it's my passion, but I'm also starting to get good at it. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool, that kind of goal setting process. My background is kind of from coaching as well, and from knowing that kind of steady progression, your dad kind of sounded like he got it perfect, and it is nice. It must feel a great feeling that it was those small steps, but each time you were progressing and you felt like you were getting better, that must have helped massively, I suppose, on the mental side of things.
Yeah, of course. I think Dad's always been he's known as being a really chilled out character in the paddock, and someone that lets me crack on and never puts unnecessary pressure on me, which I think lots of dads do with the current racing drivers that I race against. But yeah, I think my dad stands out for that. And by just, especially when you first start, I sometimes go and try help out young kids, and you see their dads, like they're literally like 7 years old, and they're going, yeah, come on, you've got to win. And it doesn't start like that. If you start putting that sort of pressure, it's just they're gonna be driving around thinking of, oh, what's dad gonna say when I come in, because I haven't done what he told me to do while I was going out racing, enjoying myself. And yeah, if I didn't achieve what my dad suggested, it wouldn't, I know it wouldn't be a problem, but I sort of looked up to my dad a lot, so I wanted to achieve that for him. And then it just turned out to be a nice steady ladder to winning, really.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, my background is from coaching cricket, and I see it with the parents, in terms of the ones who are a lot more relaxed and allow the kind of guys to progress and go. They're the kids who kind of excel, because, like you feel, there's no pressure in terms of environment, and that's really great. Must be a really great thing for have growing up. But we'll round off on the karting. We got a few. I'll drop a few questions in from kind of people that I got to contribute. Mark, who obviously is part of the channel, and Katie and David as well. And David, I don't know if he wouldn't be offended if you don't remember, but he's got his little son Ayrton.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
There you go. And so he dropped in his first question I've got for you is what's the difference between karting in Spain and England, apart from the obvious one, which is the weather?
Well, yeah, there's the obvious one, and then I don't know. I think over in Spain it was a bit more leveled, I'd say, because people don't really, the economy wasn't great when I was out there racing, so pretty much everyone was on a limited budget, which made the racing so close, because we used to just buy engines off the shelf and go racing, and everyone was sort of there or thereabouts in terms of equipment. Then I moved over here, over England, and it was so different. I mean, I had people spend it. I heard people spend 50 grand in a Rotax Junior engine. People paying $1,000 a day to be in a certain team, and we was up against that. And obviously, we didn't have. It's not that we did it wrong because we should have done things differently. It's that we couldn't do what everyone else was doing because we didn't have that sort of budget for karting. So yeah, I mean, that was a big shock at first. It was like, in terms, it felt like I sort of taken a step back. But again, the racing over here, I think that the level of driving, regardless of any kit or anything else, is a bit higher, especially in karting. And then again, yeah, the tricky conditions with mixed weather and rain at first was so shocking. Like, I think I must have driven in the wet in Spain probably about 4 or 5 times, and I probably did the first 5 sessions over in England were wet, so so that was a bit hard to get used to that at the start as well.
Yeah, kind of baptism of fire, I think, definitely on there. But that's interesting, the transition. And I know, especially from looking into the junior formula, budget is a massive thing, and it's a massive barrier for some people in terms of it, but you got to make the most of it what you can do, and I think you're certainly one of the drivers who is going about business doing that. But we'll move now on to your kind of open wheel racing, and I think we'll jump straight in with the first full season in British F4 in 2017, and obviously first round, you managed to get your first victory, kind of stand on top of the podium at Brands Hatch. That was pretty cool, I bet.
Yeah, so 2017 was a massive learning curve for me. I did a part season in 2016, and my last race in 2016, I finished third, and I was only just turned 15. So there was massive hype around me, massive expectations from, teams and everyone really. And yeah, we did. I won the first race at Brands Hatch in the first round, but then we sort of tabled off it a little bit, and it was a tricky year for me. I think driving wise and mentally as well. I was expecting a much better season, but for one reason or the other, which I'm not going to get into, I wasn't given that opportunity really, which was a shame. But still, I learned lots, and I wouldn't be the driver I am today without that season. Really, it was a massive standing point for me.
Yeah, and well, I know previous to this, you've got on your channel, haven't you? You've got a kind of highlights reel, and the kind of overtaking and the wheel-to-wheel action, especially in that kind of lower formula with it being kind of spec cars, it is a real learning curve. And what would you say is like the biggest step up from karting to that kind of first open wheel racing?
You got to be a lot. Well, it's just a complete different world, really. I mean, if you're talking driving wise, you just sort of got to forget everything that you learn in karts and just start all over again, because you got to start thinking about lots of different stuff, aero balance. The main thing for me was weight distribution, so where you place the weight of the car at what point in the corners, which is so different compared to a kart, which is all sort of the same. If you turn left, yeah, you got a bit more weight on the left, on the right hand side, but it's not such. The suspension makes it a lot harder. And racing wise, you've got to be a lot more tactical and think ahead a lot more. Obviously in karts, the slipstream is massive, so if you sort of mess up in the last corner, you hang on to the straight and then do the move then. Whilst in cars, you got to remember, no DRS or anything in Formula 4. It was tough to make sure you're at the right place at the right time. And the drivers I was up against, especially in my first year of British F4, they're very talented, and most of them, as you see, they're up on the ladder. So
yeah, I would say Oscar Piastri and Logan Sargent, obviously part of the F3 grid for this current season. Hopefully when we get things going, they must have been a real challenge. Were they the two top guys you faced in that 2017 year, or did anyone else kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, obviously Caroline absolutely, had an amazing first half of the season, but no one could really get near him, to be fair. But yeah, I think Logan, yeah, he was good, but there was a lot of hype around him. Obviously, he won a lot in karting, and he never sort of, obviously it was his first year. It wasn't as competitive as his teammate Jamie. So yeah, it was a challenge here. And I remember a race in Rockingham. I think it was race 2. We had a great battle. I think we were fighting for third actually, and yeah, I ended up finishing on top of that one. But he is a great driver, and he has progressed massively. I see him in Formula Renault. He did an amazing job as well. And same with Oscar. I mean, he was my teammate, so I did learn lots of him. I'm sure he learned lots of me as well, because I had those few rounds of experience from the year before. And yeah, he's extremely talented, and I think he showed it last year in the Formula Renault Championship by winning it. And yeah, I mean, he's with a great team, right? He's with Prema, probably the best team for FIA 3 at the moment. Or if you look at the stats from last year, they pretty much took over. So again, you're expecting him to be up there, really.
Yeah, Prema certainly do have like a great environment, especially in the F3. They've almost got that kind of category in lockdown at the moment. So, well, I think both of them are in there. So it's a real good opportunity because, yeah, I think Logan struggled with Carlin. Carlin never got it together really the previous season. But so obviously, I'm going to presume this is Brands Hatch. But was there anything that was kind of the main highlight of that first full season in 2017?
Yeah, one of them was Brands Hatch. Obviously, getting my first win was an amazing experience, and it was a big weight off my shoulders as well. And another one I'd say was probably Thruxton Race 2. I remember where I think it was just incredibly close racing, and there the slipstream does work very efficiently. So I was swapping one lap. I'll start the lap, I don't know, 6th, 7th, and finish the lap in the lead or second. It was just that sort of race, and it wasn't such a highlight in terms of result because I think I messed up a bit towards the end, so I ended up finishing 4th or 5th. But the fun was just unreal. It's by far the most exciting race I've had, really.
That sounds like a hell of a race, and yeah, the slipstreaming must be fun because yeah, just watching the kind of highlight clips and having seen the F4s herself, it is that kind of the slipstream is the massive bit where you've got to overtake on that. That's your kind of, like you were saying earlier, you've got to be really smart in terms of how you do it, and like your nose is almost on the back of the other car, isn't it, to kind of make the move stick.
Yeah, of course. The thing with Thruxton is you could go a move in the corners, and yeah, it could be easy. People would just let you by because in about 30 seconds time you've got a massive straight, and then they're going to get straight past you again. So everyone sort of leaves the door a bit open for the corners because they want to finish the lap in the lead. So but again, different drivers would attack in certain sectors. There's only 2 braking points there, so certain drivers would attack on the first braking point for the first section, and then other drivers would attack for the last section. So it was good to see what choices were taken by which driver, sort of thing. So yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, a massive one on the learning curve, isn't it? And kind of knowing that probably helps you in terms of how you were racing them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you'd usually see that the sort of hot-headed drivers would go for a lunge into the corners, and the more tactical, cool-headed would just wait for the straights. But yeah,
it certainly was an interesting one. But we'll move on to 2018, and obviously, it was 7th. I think you finished in 2017, wasn't it, in the overall standings? And then moving on to your second full-time season in British F4, you came second in that, and that's quite an improvement in terms of where you were. Both seasons were with Arden. Well, first of all, what was that season like, coming second in the championship, obviously racking up 4 wins that season? How was that season?
Stressful, very stressful. We moved from Arden. Obviously, we had to say our goodbyes after a season and a bit. So we moved on to JHR for that season, and yeah, you just didn't know what to expect. It's a complete different environment in JHR. They worked a bit differently to the Arden guys, so it's something I had to get used to in the first few tests. That's for sure. But yeah, again, we turned up. I had literally zero expectations. We had our budget there was probably for that season was probably the lowest we've ever had in single seaters. We really struggled to get the money up. So we had, I think it was 3 or 4 test days away from the race weekends, and we were up against people that were testing 2 to 3 times a week. So I just said, look, regardless of what happens, I just got to carry on learning. And at first, we sort of took it as a transitional year to keep the budget low and work on next season's budget and see what we can do racing wise. But then we turned up. We sort of had the pace in practice, 3rd, 4th, not that far off. And then came quali and took double pole and ended up winning 2 out of 3 races and finishing second in the reverse grid. So that set massive standards for the rest of the season, really.
Yeah, I imagine that couldn't have been a better start. I mean, yeah, the literally only better start is you win all three. But, you know, it's a hell of a start. And, yeah, set the tone. I think you got another 12, you was 12 podiums in total that season, was it?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, mightily impressive. And what was the highlight from that season? What was the moment? And at what point in the season did you kind of go, wow, I'm in serious contention at the top here?
I think after the first race, I knew that I would be fighting for the championship, even if I had a sort of consistent rest of the season. You know, the amount of points we scored on that weekend alone was, you know, we had a massive points lead after round one, and then. But yeah, there was not really a highlight as in terms of race. I think the main highlight there was probably the battle for the championship with Kean Joyce, which was close all year really, and it was so hard, and you had to get, you know, every little mistake he did, I'd take, you know, advantage of and move further ahead, or any mistake I did, he'd take advantage of and move closer or overtake in the lead. So, you know, it was a real tactical game, and we had to make sure that we were both at the top of our games every single session, really. I think that was the main highlight. And again, it was a good experience for me. I learnt lots by, you know, it's the first time in single seaters that I had to fight for a championship. So I think that was probably the most I learned out of that year, really.
Yeah, I mean, competing in single seater in only kind of your second full season for a title must have been something pretty exciting, and I'm sure gave you like a real buzz throughout the season because, well, yeah, like you said, stressful, but was there excitement getting to each round?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, the way you turn up to a race weekend is. I noticed it from 2017 to 2018. I'd turn up to a race 2017 and you look at the points table, you're like, oh, I'm seventh, sixth, whatever. And you just lack motivation because you know that you're not going to be, you know, you're going to be up there, but you're struggling with the guys right at the top. So, you know, it's a lot different to turning up, knowing you're, you know, right up there, and every session you'll do, you're bang on the pace. So I think that for me was like a bit different because obviously you'd sort of seen as one of the top dogs, I call it.
No, that must be kind of, yeah, something surreal to go through just in the space of a season. But obviously Kean would be one of the top guys, but rookie seasons of Dennis Hauger and Jack Doohan as well, who have progressed to F3. Did you were they the kind of three best guys that you came across in that season?
I think so. Yeah, I think, you know, Dennis had a really good year, but it was more out and out pace really compared to Doohan. I mean, if you saw Doohan in your mirrors, you'd probably be a bit more worried than you know, seeing Dennis, just because Jack, you know, any little sniff he gets, he would literally go for it and he'd give it 110%, whilst Dennis would sort of qualify maybe a bit higher up sometimes, but it was more a one lapper sort of thing. Obviously his racecraft was good, but you know, it was a lot easier to defend compared to Jack. But yeah, I'd say that they were probably the three guys up there. I mean, then you had Prio as well, sort of chipping in, and he was there or thereabouts in some rounds, especially towards the second half of the season. So yeah, I mean, it was a season where, yeah, it was me and Kean up in front, but then, you know, the likes of, yeah, the Doohans, the Haugers, there was always someone there in the mix trying to spoil things a bit.
Yeah, it must have been kind of great, and it's interesting probably at that level, kind of you're all these kind of young lads kind of going through it, and just week in week out, new faces, well, not new faces popping up, but you get to know each other over the season, and like you said, just having that thing of having the better racecraft, and you going, oh god, he might get one over me here, and Dennis being feeling a little bit more secure, but I'm sure, you know, both are kind of developed in the time. It's always interesting to go with that. But halfway through that season, it was for Chris Ditton that obviously you went on to race for in 2019. You get a call up, don't you? And you get to do some rounds in British F3.
Yeah, originally I got the call up to do Spa, and when we first got the call, I mean, Chris rang up, said, "Look, you know, I've lost both. I think he had two drivers at the start of the year. He lost one after the first round, and then the other they both drivers he had were, I believe, they had very low budgets and couldn't afford the rest of the season. And he said, I need someone out there that's going to be quick and that's going to, show if that car has the pace or not. And then I said, well, as much as I'd love to race at Spa, because it's probably it is my favourite circuit now, but obviously I wouldn't know back then. I wanted to do it so bad, and we have to make a bit of a compromise. Obviously, we were tight on budget that year, but then I mean, he made an extreme effort to get us out there and tried his best in terms of cost, which really helped. And saw ourselves driving in Spa and then eventually doing the Donington round and Silverstone. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, having kind of tracks like Silverstone and Spa, they're obviously like classics and hallmarks of like the F1 calendar. It must feel pretty surreal to kind of be going, wow, I'm racing on these tracks that greats have driven on before me, and well, like you said, Spa's now your favourite race, and I just imagine that's for the speed.
Not just the speed, it's just, I think the track itself really suits me in terms of my style, so that's good. I think every time I've been there, I've been quick. So obviously that's going to be a big step towards liking the circuit. And then just the circuit itself, I mean, the layout is unbelievable. I mean, Eau Rouge, the first time I went through it, it wasn't the greatest experience, and I wasn't that relaxed. But I mean, it is an easy flat corner. But when you first get told that, and they go on, mate, go and do it flat wheel, and you go out on your first push lap, you're just like, you're trying to lift, but it should be flat. And it was that experience there. I remember it from my first lap in the British F3 it was tough to keep my foot down through Eau Rouge, but just the circuit layout and the place itself. I mean, Belgium is an amazing country, and the hotels I've stayed around the circuit are just unbelievable, and the people there are just so nice and loving. So, and as you said, I stepped up to these tracks. Obviously, I raced Silverstone before, but I only did the national layout, and I got to drive the GP circuit for the first time. And it's sort of, in a way, it's like I'm closer to my dream, because now I'm doing these circuits that the people I look up to drive on. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine just how incredible that sort of feeling does. But what was, in terms of the car, what was the step up in terms of between the British F4 cars and the British F3 ones?
I think that I didn't really notice the step until the Silverstone round, purely because in Spa you just don't have any downforce. You try to keep it as low as possible. So the chassis itself, it was sort of similar to the Miguel, which is the F4, but I think minimum speeds were probably a bit more understeer, but that's about it. In the high speeds, yes, it had overall a bit more downforce in the F4, but it didn't feel a huge step up, which probably helps, to be fair, to do the first round out there where there's no downforce needed and stuff. So it, then I came across, what's the next? Yeah, the next one was Silverstone, which you run pretty much, well, max or close to max downforce, really. And the speed you're allowed to carry through Maggots and Beckett's, I was like, whoa. My neck was a bit sore after the first test day on a Friday. But and then of course Donington as well. I think the main thing really with Silverstone, the national bit at least, was the change in how much grip you're allowed to have compared to the F4 car, and how you can push a lot more compared to what you used to. That was tricky at first, and same with Donington, where every corner, it's you approach it thinking you're in an F4, but then you sort of got to think, right, I've just got to literally forget the minimum speeds, the gearing, everything, and just try to take it as quick as possible because I've got all this downforce.
Yeah, I imagine that. I mean, obviously you're a bit of a speed adrenaline junkie anyway, to be kind of racing a car, but still there must be that fact of approaching a corner going, this is the quickest I've ever been in this corner. This is a little bit scary at times, or are you just a bit like, you know what, it becomes second nature?
Apart from Eau Rouge, which was what you just said, no, I think it was just like, wow, like that was awesome. That was quick. So I quite enjoyed taking all these corners, probably, I don't know, 15 to 20k kilometers an hour quicker than what I'm used to. Yeah, it was like, again, as I said, it's like a step up sort of. You're like, this is closer to what I would drive if I get to my goal and to my dream. So yeah.
So obviously, then you've had this taste of it, and then obviously you come second in British F4. You're kind of you're the highest point scorer in F4 history, aren't you? On that basis, so it's a nice little note to kind of have on it, isn't it? Obviously, it's something that you kind of use to keep progressing. But yeah, obviously Chris gave you the call up, and for 2019, wanting you to do the full season for them.
Yeah, I mean, before the season started, it was really tough for us because the few rounds we did it with Chris, we just had amazing pace. I mean, when I turned up at Spa, I got the call up probably, I'd say about a week before, 6 days before I had to fly out and go over there to Belgium. So I had no testing. I didn't know what to expect from the car, nothing. I just rocked up, jumped in the car and done the best job I could, and ended up qualifying fourth. The racing wasn't great. I mean, I had a few incidents in the first corner. So yeah, sort of. Oh well, actually, I finished fourth in a reverse grid, which is quite cool. And then yeah, same with Silverstone. Finished, I think, sixth, and well, every race I did there was in the top 10. And Donington qualifying third and finishing fourth in two of them. It was just like, without all that testing, and we've managed to do this. It created a bit of hype around me because people sort of anticipated that was going to be my next move to the full season British F3. So I had lots of different teams approaching me and trying to give me a good deal for the season, but I think Chris was the clear option just purely because it works. The few rounds we did, it worked. So why would you risk going to a different team and not putting any of the other teams down? But the way I worked with the team just clicked. So I wouldn't want to risk not having that in a different environment. Why would you come away from that sort of thing? And again, Chris helped huge. Like, he gave us a huge hand with the budget side of things and trying to get the best out of what we have. And for sure he did. I mean, we turned up. We had 5 test days included in our contract, away from race weekends. And at Alton Park, unfortunately, I still don't like this format, but we had testing on the Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. We had 3 full days of testing. And when we rocked up on the Tuesday, we was about, I don't know, I think every session was at least a second clear of anyone. So we're like, well, we're in for a good one here. And then it came to the Thursday, it was half a second. And then it came to the Friday, and we started off still half a second clearer than anyone. I think I topped every session up until the Friday. And it came to the last session before quali, and we just lost our pace. We were 2 tenths off, and we're like, God, if only we had one test day on a Friday, we would have given the other teams a chance to catch up, sort of thing. But yeah, it led on to be a brilliant season and probably the most enjoyable one of my career, I'd say.
I imagine so, because obviously finishing third in the end, expectations, I imagine, going into that season were pretty, not low, because obviously I imagine you have kind of high expectations for yourself. I know kind of in that Peter Windsor one, you back yourself like any kind of race driver has to do, and you believe you've got the speed and ability to be in the top 5 in any of the kind of competitions that you race in. So finishing third is within that kind of expectation for yourself. But yeah, was it slightly lesser because you were almost probably viewing this as this is my almost grounding season before maybe pushing on and having a second season in F3?
Yeah, well, obviously we wanted to get the first season out of the way. We didn't know if we was going to go for a second season, but again, I mean, from the races we'd done the previous year, we knew that we'd be there or thereabouts, but still, Chris is a low budget team that do an amazing job, and we're thinking, oh, God, we've got 5 test days, and we're up against the Carlins and, you know, the double R's, which test all the time, and Fortec and all these big teams. And that's the sort of, you know, that's what we're up against. So, you know, I didn't set high standards. Obviously, I wanted to do as best as I could, and I went out there and tried to win every race I've done. But I wasn't going to put myself down if I didn't, because, you know, again, we didn't have let's say the facilities that all the other teams had. But, you know, it just turned out to be Chris. Just the way they set up is amazing. The way they work with what they have, they extract 110% out of anything, out of the driver, car, test days, everything. So for me, it's a bit of, you know, a breath of fresh air where, you know, a team is so committed to what you're doing and want to help you so bad and extract every single bit out of not just the car but out of me as well. And yeah, I mean, finishing third, well, of course I was happy with it in my first full season of British F3. Of course I'd like to win it, but, you know, then you've got to, when you first finish third, you're like, oh, maybe if I did this or I did that different, you know, if I wiped out all my mistakes, I might have finished second, or I might have been, you know, further up closer to an overlap, which ended up winning the championship. But then you think, I mean, the two people that were on top of me on the table, and probably about 3 or 4 people below me, were probably had double the budget and double the test days. I mean, obviously you don't know that for sure, but, you know, seeing the people and the teams that were around and with, that's the sort of, you know, you got to consider that as well. So that makes it a bit sweeter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine the 3 victories you got that season, kind of one at the first round of Silverstone, one at Spa, and one at the second round of Silverstone, they must be sweeter as well, just because of the circuits that they were. You know, obviously, you know, Donington, Brands Hatch are great as well on it, but yeah, I imagine those being the kind of Grand Prix circuits must have kind of felt a little bit sweeter.
Yeah, of course. I mean, especially the Spa one. It just felt, mate, and the way that weekend we were so close to reaching perfection. I mean, we was, in terms of qualifying and racing, I think we were a bit up and down in the practice. And funny enough, the last session before qualifying, I think we was over a second off. And I was like, I was scratching my head, and I was going, oh, it's not going to be. It's going to be one of those weekends where you just don't know what's going to happen. You're going to be battling in, you know, mid pack and stuff. And then, you know, Chris just said, look, just go out there and do it. I was thinking maybe it's the way I'm driving, maybe it's, you know, I'm not doing things right. There's something that's not clicking. And I remember Chris coming up to me and said, look, he said, just go out there and drive exactly like you did in that last session. I'm like, what? I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, just go out in a double pole by 3/10, which at Spa is amazing, without a tow or anything. And yeah, and then the first race finished second, which arguably, if, you know, again, you just think, well, maybe if I did things different, I would have won it, but still second is a good result. And in the third race, to just drive away from everyone at Spa, where the tow is so effective, you know, really did show that, one, the team are capable of winning, and me, I was capable to just drive away into a distance, even in a circuit like Spa. So, yeah, I mean, that was probably the favourite weekend I had that season.
It certainly sounds it, and certainly kind of the way you kind of recall it. Yeah, it sounds like it was just a brilliant weekend, and it's quite. I imagine it's probably quite funny those weekends. You get a few of them where you're going, oh, I'm not sure where we'll be, and then suddenly like, oh wow, yeah, we did great.
That was exactly it.
So obviously you rounded off that season. Well, I'll do what we've done with all of the seasons to date. Who were the kind of best guys you kind of came up against? Obviously, I presume Novalak winning it was one of the top guys. Obviously, again, another guy progressed on, but you got another guy joining in Euro Formula Opener this year, just announced, was Manuel Maldonado. How are these guys? And obviously, Kian, who'd beaten you in British F4 the season before, you came out on top on that one.
Yeah, I mean, Novalak was, yeah, he had pace, but he was just extremely consistent. He's a driver that never really took risks, especially unnecessary risks. He planned all his moves, and, you know, being that consistent, ended up winning the championship. But I think the hardest opponent for me was probably battling with Jonathan Hoggard. I think me and him were the ones that had the most outright pace that season, but just couldn't put it together. You know, I would have the odd incident in the reverse grid. He'd have the odd incident, whilst Novalak would constantly finish in the top five. I think that's where we both missed out. But I think, you know, it was enjoyable fighting against him for the, you know, just out and out pace. And, you know, I think we both learned lots of that season. You know, showed that, you know, you could be the quickest man out there, but if you don't finish the races, you know, you could win a race and then finish last in the next one. If you finish consistently up there, it's going to win you a championship. So I think with Jonathan was definitely the toughest. Then, I mean, Mald and I didn't really experience. I mean, I'm not being horrible or anything, but I didn't really experience, you know, racing against him that season. I think, well, maybe in a reverse grid, I was sort of around him, but you know, I think he struggled a bit last season. He had a good season in 2018, but I think he expected a bit more out of the 2019 season, but wasn't quite there for him, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, I've seen that he's been announced. You know, it would be good to race against him another year. And yeah, with Clement, it was, I didn't really race. We was always in different parts of the track, really, in terms of race pace. I think the only race I had against him was Alton Park, where he was on pole when I think I finished second in one of them, and then he finished third and I finished second in the second, something like that. But we were sort of around each other, so that was really the only round where, you know, with Jonathan, we was always at the same parts at a circuit in every race, really. And with Kian, yeah, again, you know, I think he struggled a bit in the first half of the season, at least, the transition up to F3, which, you know, is quite hard. It's quite a bit different to F4. So, you know, I did expect to have a bit of a steady progression up to, you know, I expected to be stronger towards the end, but, you know, by having a very good first round and being up there from the start, sort of, you know, got me quite hyped up for the rest of the season, and we sort of managed to stay up there and thereabouts. But yeah, with Kieran, yeah, I mean, he beat me in F4, so at the start he was the one to beat, because I thought, you know, he'd have the pace straight away. But again, it was a bit. I was a bit shocked, really. He struggled a bit in the first half. The second half, he was really competitive, and I did, you know, come across a few races when it was just me and him on the track, especially race 3, the one, I think it's the last race I won that season. It was just me and him that just drove into a distance, and that was it, really. It felt like the old days a bit, but yeah, I mean, there's not much more. I think Jonathan was probably the toughest, really.
Nice. It's probably nice to kind of quite have that rivalry through the season in terms of fighting someone. And I imagine by the end of the season, well, obviously he raced the previous season with you in British F4 as well, didn't he? So
yeah, Jonathan did. Yeah, again, he was sort of steady on for the first half, and then the second half, he somewhere, I don't know what happened, but he just started becoming unbelievably quick, really, and started getting poles everywhere for the second half of the season. So yeah, I was a bit shocked at first, you know, from being a, you know, sort of top 7 driver to, you know, I think he got like 5 poles in the second half of the season, that season in British F4, the last season. And yeah, he sort of carried that on to British F3. So it was, you know, I was sort of expecting Kieran to be a bit higher up, because obviously he won it, but, you know, it was sort of, it's nice to see that the graduates from F4 were up there straight away in British F3.
yeah, it must be nice for that transition. But obviously that rounded off a season. What was your thoughts in the close season? I imagine, obviously, with your ambition, obviously wanting to climb the ladder in next step, did you expect to be given the opportunity that you've been given with Double R Racing in Euro Formula Open?
I think so. Yeah, I think, you know, to just move from, you know, one series to another and being quick straight away sort of shows that, you know, you can adapt quickly. And I think, personally, I think my time in British F3 was sort of not done, but, you know, I learned everything that I had to learn. I think the main thing I learnt was how to drive with high downforce really, because obviously we didn't quite have as much downforce in year 4. But yeah, I felt another season. After finishing third, there's lots and lots of anticipation if I was to do another season for me to win it. And if I was to be given the opportunity to do a higher formula, of course I'd take it, because personally I feel like I'm ready. But it was on the cards, that's for sure. We was quite close to doing another year of British F3, but me and Dad, worked extremely hard over the winter to get the sponsorship we needed. Aiming for the Euro formula, and we got there in the end. So I think obviously I've got to thank Double R and the boys for giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, I imagine you just kind of can't wait for when we finally do get kind of action back out on track to actually start that. But obviously Double R, you've raced against them as a team in kind of British F4 and F3. They're relative newcomers to Euroformula Open. I think they finished third last year in the championship. So, well, what do you think? I'll combine this is like a question from David and Mark as well. What are the kind of main strengths of Double R, and you got high expectations for the upcoming season?
I think if you see what they've done in not only in F3 but in other single seater series that they've been involved, they've been a winner. They've been there and they've done it. They've won. And for me, obviously I was keeping an eye on the whole series as a whole last year. And for them to be a newcomers to the championship, really, I know they weren't a long time out, but to just step back into the scene and be up there sort of straight away was quite impressive. And yeah, the other thing is, every time I've raced against Double R, well, I've been racing against them since my first year in F4, and they've always been up there. They've always won, and yeah, they beat me that year with Kieran in F4. So for me, it just shows that they're winners. They've won it. So they're just trying to keep that momentum going and try to just carry on winning.
Yeah, it must be kind of exciting to kind of be part of the team. But obviously, it's someone another new team that you've had to. But it's pretty much since 2017 been a new team every year that you've had to kind of get used to. So. Have you actually met some of the guys at Double R and kind of the guys you're going to be working with on race day?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've spent a few days up in a factory, purely just get to know everyone sort of on a good level and be friendly with everyone. So it just makes it a lot easier when it comes down to working on the car and working on a racetrack. So yeah, I know everyone there, not just from the Euroformula group, but also from the British F4 and the British F3 group. So, great bunch of guys. I've done a test day with them at Silverstone with a new car, and it went really well. And the way we was working was, I was really, really impressed by their methods and the way they structure things up. So, yeah, I mean, as you say, once we get going, it should be a really exciting season. Honestly, I've been sitting indoors thinking of different outcomes and hopefully how each race is going to plan out. And I just can't wait really. I can't wait to drive that car again with the boys.
I bet it must be so exciting, and for you just be kind of just itching like that feel to get on the racetrack as well and build on the momentum that obviously you've been building over the past couple of years. I got another question from Mark here, and it's, well, I think he kind of feels it might be this one, but he's asking, what track are you most looking forward to on the Euroformula grid, and what's it going to be like driving on a circuit like the Pau Grand GP in France? Obviously, that's the first race was held in 1933, kind of historic in terms of it's been even on the Formula 2 grid at times. I think Jim Clark won it 4 times. But yeah, what's your most track you're kind of looking forward to, and thoughts on Pau in particular?
Well, funny enough, the one I was looking forward to the most was PAL, just purely because, yeah, as you said, the history behind it and just the circuit itself is, it looks awesome, especially in an F3 car. So I was looking forward to that, but I think it might be a struggle to get it on the calendar this year. I think it's the only race that they haven't, announced that there's going to be. Is it going to be delayed? Is it going to be cancelled? We just don't know. And you know, hopefully they can get it on the calendar. That would be a plus, that's for sure. But yeah, I think Power was the one I was looking forward to the most. And I think well, most of the circuits I haven't driven at would probably ones as well that I'll be looking forward to just to see what it's like. Obviously, all very competitive circuits like Nürburgring and Hungary, and places like Imola, and Monza. Sorry, it's just places where again I see all the people I look up to driving on. So again, that little personal feeling, it would feel like I'm getting closer to that dream, and I'm driving on these cool circuits that my idols drive on.
I imagine it just must be so exciting to kind of with that. But that interesting is that it is PAL that was it. I know Mark thought it would be because it like you said, it's a track that has so much kind of history to it that it's just intriguing. And yeah, the track layout itself is brilliant. We'll have another question from David, and that was, obviously we've spoken about this earlier in this kind of chat, and your ability of not having the testing of other people. With obviously everything that's happened in the coronavirus this season, if it's going to fit in, is going to be on a shorter time span, and I imagine there'll be less testing available. Do you think, obviously, your ability to adapt to tracks well will maybe give you a slight advantage?
I wouldn't say an advantage. Obviously, it's a brand new car for me to learn as well. So obviously, the more time I've got to familiarise myself with the new car, the better. But I think the good thing is that it's a new car for the season. Everyone's got to adapt to it. So yeah, I guess that seeing how much. Well, I've always had to be up against lots of testing with my competitors, and for the first time, they haven't had it, sort of thing, because obviously they couldn't. So it'd be good to see. I wouldn't say an advantage, but it'd be interesting to see, who's quicker, because obviously there's other drivers out there that are really talented, but just haven't got the money and the budget to go out and spend it on testing. So it would just be interesting for me to see who would be up there and who would struggle. But for me, again, it sort of plays into my hands slightly. I've always, from the first season of F4, really, I've had to be up against that, and I've had to learn something new, even in races. So yeah, I guess it's exciting, that's for sure. But you just don't know. I mean, you could think 100 things. There's no point putting yourself under pressure because you think that you should have the advantage. So yeah, I mean, it should. I just think it's going to be interesting to see who's quick straight away and who isn't.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a weird win for all the teams to kind of adapt to, and all the drivers, including yourself. It's something that is massively different to try and cope with. But I've got another question from Mark here, and the last one. Obviously, I presume it's at this career, although you have aspirations of reaching the top, it's a season on season approach to it. But if you could plot out your ideal career path over the, say, next 3-4 years, what would be the ones you'd be kind of looking for, or what's your path?
I think the next move up personally would probably be Formula 2, just because the FIA 3 and the Euro Formula are sort of similar cars in terms of handling. Probably the FIA has probably got a bit more power, so I probably wouldn't aim to get a budget together to go to F3. My team are working extremely hard to already start to find a budget, that is sort of around the F2 budget, which we haven't predicted when that budget's going to be available and when, or if we're going to have it yet. But I know that we're working extremely hard on it, me and my team. So I think the next step up would be F2. Ideally, next year or within 2 years. Probably would be within 2 years because we got to find about, I think it's around 2.4 million for a budget, and it's a big step up from a Euro Formula budget. But you just never know, really. You just got to. For me, as you say, it's a season by season approach. I think I focus on the season ahead and focus on achieving what I can and getting the best out of that season, because obviously the better you do in your season ahead, it's the easier it's going to be in terms of money when you move up. Obviously teams will try to help you because they see you've got the pace. So, but yeah, within the next 2-3 years, hopefully in F2, hopefully knocking on the doors of F1. So fingers crossed, and I know we work extremely hard to get there, because we're literally working non-stop even in these hard times. So we'll see. I mean, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say, yeah, we'll be in F2. I wish it was that easy. I wish I had the money to just go, yeah, I'll be in F2 next year, or I'll be knocking on the doors of F1 within 2 years. But it's a bit harder for us. But we'll see what happens. Maybe we raise up a good budget close to the F2 grid, and we decide to do, step it up to FIA or 3. We just don't know. So, as you say, for me, it's a season by season approach.
Yeah, it's you got to do it, and you got to have it with the kind of on-track performance as well, which I know obviously you'll be working as hard as possible to kind of make sure. But it's good at having that forward planning in place. It's interesting actually to hear that you're already planning for a budget in terms of the F2 category. I think what we'll do in terms of rounding off this chat is a few kind of more general. That was, I think, thanks for kind of sharing such a kind of detailed look at your career, but just kind of a little bit more kind of personal, not kind of like intrusive personal, but in terms of just like things. I've got a question here from Katie. She's got a daft one as well that we'll round off with, but your kind of biggest inspirations in both motorsport and in general.
As in people, or
as in people.
Within motorsport, of course, probably Ayrton Senna would be the main one, along with Lewis Hamilton. I think with Ayrton, obviously the name and of course what he achieved and the big personality it's just amazing to see, and it would be good to replicate. And then let's not forget the God-given talent he had. And then with Lewis, I think, I sort of relate to him. He started with literally nothing. He lived up Stevenage, which is literally like 20 minutes away from me. It's not that far at all. So I could understand sort of the pain he's had to go through to get to Formula One. Not all of it, because I haven't got as far as he has. But, for me, he gives me that motivation that shows me that, he had nothing and he still reached the top. I know it's a bit different these days and the budgets are a lot higher, but he sort of inspires me to keep pushing. And outside the motorsport world, I don't know, probably I have a few in terms of football, but I think the main one will probably, again, Conor McGregor. He went from nothing as well. He went from not being able to pay his debts and living with his mum and not having nothing with his girlfriend, which is what we sort of have, me and my girlfriend out here. And he went to being, I think probably a billionaire now and being a two-time two-weight division champion. So it's sort of people like that have come from absolutely nothing, that thought that, they were going to be nothing in life and ended up achieving the unachievable, really, which is what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's massive inspiration. It's cool listening to those, and it's interesting that Conor McGregor and Lewis Hamilton, in terms of seeing a little bit of yourself and your journey, in terms of, and you've just got to keep fighting. You just got to fight that little bit harder, haven't you, to prove it doesn't necessarily mean on an ability front, but I think they're pretty good role models to have on those front, although I know obviously Conor has some things around it that have been a little controversial at times, but Lewis certainly on that aspect. But obviously we've dropped him in there Your dad's obviously played an absolutely huge part. Seeing a massive Nigel Mansell fan, the guy holding the kind of red 5 flag as well at the Grand Prix. That I think he was quite happy to kind of note that. Didn't he meet Nigel in an airport at some point and bring that up?
Yeah, yeah, he did, mate. You know, I mean, like I think his flight got delayed or cancelled. He was actually flying. Oh, where was he? I think he was flying back to Spain, over to see us and the family. And you know, I think the flight agency said, "Look, your flight's being cancelled or something happened, so we're going to put you in this waiting room, in this VIP room where people sort of paid to wait before their flights." And obviously, he went for it. And as soon as he walked in, you just see Nigel Mansell sitting there reading the paper, and Dad being Dad, and obviously being a massive fan of him, he just went straight over to him and started talking to him. And to be fair, they did talk for quite a while. I think Nigel just thought he was a bit of a fan at first, which he is, but I think he wouldn't think that he's involved so deeply in the motorsport world. So yeah, they got to meet each other. But as you said, my dad's played a massive part of my career, and he puts unbelievable amounts of faith in me. And again, he never gives up, and I never give up, and we will carry on achieving and trying to get to Formula One until there's literally nothing else more that we can do. We've had to remortgage house and all sorts of things to get out there in a grid. So I'm forever grateful for what my dad's done, even so far. So yeah, I mean, let's see. I think me and him have a great chemistry in terms of not giving up and giving it all we have in anything we do. So
yeah, I think even in the kind of short thing video, obviously I'll leave a link to that video as well in the kind of description below that Peter did on you. But you can tell just how your dad was, like you've mentioned, that kind of relaxed approach to you, gives you all the support you need, but you in turn, obviously with your hard work ethic and everything, he just seems relaxed, and he seems a very proud dad of obviously what you've achieved to date, which I suppose is probably even more so than what you thought a 5-year-old Ayrton might achieve. But it's still obviously in your mind a job not done yet.
Yeah, for me, obviously the job wouldn't be done until we get there. But I know, as I said, we'll keep pushing as far as we can go. And yes, Dad's a very proud man, and he keeps saying to me, "How do we do this?" It says at the end of every season, we sort of come together and we say, right, if we're going to move out, we need X amount. How are we going to go out and find it? And yeah, at times is unbelievably stressful. That obviously nothing comes easy when it comes to going out and finding money and the right sponsors and stuff. But we just keep doing it, and we keep going up, and we keep moving up, and keep finding the money. And he just says to me, he goes, how the hell do we do this? I don't know. We just keep moving up and keep getting closer and closer. So hopefully we'll carry on doing that. But again, I wouldn't be here without my dad or the sponsors I have with me today. Very loyal, very supportive, and they see the talent I have. Not being big headed or anything. They must see something, and they must see a pattern where all that I need is the money and the resources to get to where I want to get. So yeah, I'm going to briefly mention my sponsors, Naked Speed and Drywall Solutions. Actually backed me since I was in karts, since I think I was about 12. They first started sponsoring me. And yeah, Gears Limited, Hawkers, Adrian Flux, they're all very supportive, and they will always be there, especially in these hard times. They're still with me, so it just shows.
That's it. That's incredible to have that support and backing, and obviously that belief in people below you. It's almost, it's one of the kind of great things about motorsport for me. It's, although you are the pinnacle head of it and the driver in that car, there's a whole team behind it. There's a whole your race team, your family team, your sponsor team, in terms of everything's kind of gearing to getting you towards this one goal, which is obviously hopefully one day potentially racing in F1, which it must feel pretty cool to be a part of.
Yeah, of course. And again, we'll end up being friends at the end of the day. We get on with all our sponsors. We don't see them as sponsors. We see them as friends. And yeah, there's lots of teams. There's a lot more involved in a racing driver. I think most people think that during the winter, most of us just sit back, relax, and wait for the next race or wait for something to happen. To be fair, I think most people that have the budget, I think they might do that, or they'll probably start testing quite early on. But for drivers like me that haven't got the money or the resources, we have to get a team together out to, just for the money side, and we get a team that, obviously you've got to find the right team that is going to support you in a racetrack. So there's a lot more, and for me, it's probably harder during the winter, going out there and talking to people and putting myself out there than what it is actually performing on a racetrack.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be a part of, and it's nice to know that you do have that kind of relationship. That it has become a friendship, nice as well, because you're all on this journey together, almost as part of it.
Yeah, of course. That's the main thing. I think we see it as a journey, and we'll trying our best. Everyone that's on board with me give it 110%. So I'm forever grateful for that.
Absolutely, I imagine so. So I'll round up last couple of questions. One was a point that I picked up from you've kind of recently started introducing kind of rituals into it. So then you were talking about kind of listening to music, and you were listening to kind of pole laps from it. So two questions here. One would be what's your last song on the playlist? What's the one that kind of really kind of gets you going to go out with? And then second one is, what's your favourite pole lap to watch?
I'll rotate within music. It's a tricky one because I'd have certain playlists depending on how I feel before quali or a race. I know what one to put on. So if I'm feeling a bit, I don't know, sleepy and down, or what, not down, but sort of relaxed, then too relaxed for my liking, I'd probably put something a bit heavy or something a bit outgoing. Again, if I've had it before where I'm too pumped and I need to calm myself down, so I'd put something a bit more chilled. But usually, especially before quali, you probably wouldn't like it, or you probably wouldn't want to listen to it. It's Kelly Price by Migos. That's probably the last song that's on that playlist most of the time. And in terms of pole lap, I'll rotate really. My favourite would probably be, let me think, Singapore, I think, from Lewis Hamilton. I think it was 2018. Was it 2018 or 19 when he polled it by 7/10? I would watch that a few times, and it just gets you on that mindset and that mood that you've got to go out there and do that one lap, and that's sometimes depending on what series it is 2 laps, but it just gets you in the right frame of mind and gets you pumped and where you need to be.
Absolutely, I think pretty good choice there on the pole lap from Lewis. Was 2018 in Singapore in terms of street circuit pole laps for me are always the kind of best to watch, because you physically see them right on the limit because they're almost touching the wall at times. So yeah, those certainly I think would be the most inspiring pole laps.
Yeah, for sure. There's another one actually that sort of stands out, is Daniel Ricciardo's pole lap with Red Bull. When was it? I think it might have been 2018 as well. That was a pretty special lap as well. So there's another one I sort of watch every now and then.
Nice. So one daft question from Katie before I'll do kind of 3 finishers. Katie was apparently the Prema boys have been asked about pineapple on pizza. So what is your thought, Ayrton, on pineapple on pizza?
It works. It just works. It has to work. I eat pineapple on pizza. I don't know who don't, but I do.
I mean, I'm with you. I don't have anything against pineapple. I wouldn't ever look at pineapple on a pizza and go, you shouldn't be there. So I'm glad you're kind of the same thought there. And Katie does often ask kind of funny daft questions. So that's a nice one. So 3 ones for you here. Favourite driver, favourite car of all time, and these can be in Formula 1, motorsport, whatever, And then favourite driver on the current F1 grid?
Favourite driver, Ayrton Senna. Favourite car, Brawn GP 2009. And then best current driver right now, it's got to be Lewis Hamilton. I think he's miles ahead of anyone at the moment.
I think 3 very good picks there. That Brawn car especially, that's iconic to me. Just it is the fairy tale season in how it actually managed to win that championship. But Ayrton, thank you so much for kind of doing this. I know kind of taken over an hour of your time, but I really do appreciate you kind of coming on, and it was fascinating to kind of hear more about your career to date. And obviously, fingers crossed, this is kind of a midway part of the journey. There's still plenty more to come from you. So thank you for coming on.
No, thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Katie and David and everyone who's asked some questions as well. Apart from you, it's good to hear them.
Yeah, no problem. And actually, this would have come out, but I imagine it will still be on your channel before then. But Ayrton's doing a live Q&A on there, but I'm sure if you haven't watched it and you want to learn a little bit more about him, go from there. But you have your kind of YouTube channel, but following at Ayrton Simmons on Twitter is probably the best way to kind of keep up to date with you.
Yeah, that's it. Or Instagram, same name, Ayrton Simmons. It's all on the same thing. So
nice and simple, nice and easy. But yeah, thank you very much. How it should be, nice and easy to find. But Ayrton, again, thank you so much for coming on, and that's it for you guys. So for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.